Tonight, Justice League United has over 20 different heroes and tries to justify that all of them are necessary to this plot. Batman Eternal suddenly realizes it has 4 different things going on that it just never really wrapped up. And Batgirl opens up an Instagram, and somehow that is a major plot point over the course of this book. All that and more tonight on the Not-So-New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 171 of the Not-So-New 52. I am your host and I guess you could consider this the holiday special. It's a little confusing. I only say that because there is literally a holiday special book that came out this week, but it is a solid 2 weeks before Christmas, so I don't know, take it or leave it. Point being is that I've only got 11 comics to talk about this week, but for anybody who happened to tune in to last week's episode, you'll know that I had a really bad cold, and I still do, and my throat is killing me, and I kind of just want to rip my larynx out. But this intro bit is being recorded after I've already talked about all the comics, so I will stick it out for just a little bit longer here while I tell you what are these comics that came out this week. Well, like I said, there were 11 of them. In alphabetical order, because I have sorted my sheet the wrong way with this physical paper I use here, we have Batgirl, Batman Eternal, Constantine, Earth 2 World's End, Green Lantern Corps, Justice League United, Klarion, Future's End, New Suicide Squad, and World's Finest. Now, 2 things you may notice there. 1, I put Future's End after Klarion. That's not alphabetical order there. That's because the title I officially have it under is New 52 Future's End, but that's stupid. And you don't need to know it's New 52. It's the whole point of the show, is it's all New 52. Also, you may have noticed that was only 10 books, and that I didn't mention that holiday special. Well, that's because we have an 80-pager called Harley Quinn Holiday Special. It's written by Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti. It is just 3 stories. It's an anthology, and it is literally the only holiday themed we got going on. So if you want to call this a holiday special, by all means, go for it. That's at least the title I'm giving the episode. I really don't have much more to say before we get into things. Green Lantern Corps is part of the Godhead event, as always, and Klarion is just not good. But at the risk of making this first section of the video negative audience retention, I am going to start with the very much love it or hate it book, Harley Quinn's Holiday Special. Harley Quinn's Holiday Special #1, written by Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Conner, art by, like a lot of people, it is an anthology story. It's got 3 different tales in it, the first of which is like the lion's share, but we'll get to the other ones. So we'll pick up with Bad Toy, which is Conner and Palmiotti, and the artist is Mauricet. And we open up with all of the dogs and cats and stuff that Harley has living at her place. Apparently none of them were fixed, or at least not a lot of them were. And so we now have huge litters that are all born here. And we have Tony basically saying, hey, we don't have room for this. We're going to have to get rid of them. And so they get all of the kittens and puppies all bagged up, gets them into sacks, and their plan is that they're going to go out to a nearby shopping center holding signs saying, we will take your packages to your car for free. They'll start talking to the people, find out if they're good fits for pets, and then just sneak them into their packages. And by the time they realize there are cats and dogs with them, they will be long gone, and they'll already have fallen in love with them. And that's the plan. So Harley is a little bit sad to see these puppies and kittens go, but regardless, they go through with the plan. We have one who's a homemaker. She gets a dog. We have a dude who looks a lot like Santa, gets 2 cats in his. There's a woman who has like 17 other cats and dogs, all rescues, and Harley's like, oh, you're getting 2. A couple of kids see a dog getting snuck into one of the bags, and Tony threatens them and says, I'll burn all your toys if you tell your parents. There's this one guy who says, oh, well, I can't stand animals. If I see one on the road and I'm driving, it's like Frogger. I try to hit it. And Harley just puts a stick of dynamite in his bag as well. And then we see the very last one, a little pug being put inside a bag as Harley and Tony watch it going. There's also a massive explosion in the background of one of these panels that I don't think ever gets addressed. But regardless, Harley got apparently really attached to that last pug. I don't know. It has a name later on. Abu. There it is. And she's like, oh, well, I need time to process all this. And as she goes and walks away, she comes up with a plan where she goes to the police department, beats up all the cops, and gets one guy to run the plates on the car that Abu went into. So she's got an address. She says she's going to take a car and then leave. And instead of going for a cop car, she goes for a Hummer that's double parked. She hotwires it and is ready to go, and she's chewed out for driving a Hummer, to which point she says, oh, it's not mine, let me explain. And then this random homeless woman drives her to the location that's apparently 4 hours away. So she walks up to the house just being like, I'm just going to look in on him for like a minute or 12, and as she's about to looking at the window, she realizes it's unlocked, and she's like, oh, well, this is weak security. I can't trust Abu in this home. So she goes over to the tree, starts unwrapping presents until she finds the one with Abu in it. And Abu starts, licking her face. She's happy to see her, whatnot. Abu starts yapping, though. So Harley spikes some eggnog and lets Abu have some. And then she has some, and she drunkenly falls asleep with the dog in her arm. Total plot shift. In the morning, kid wakes up. Kid's name is Cindy. She's excited for Christmas. She goes to wake up her father and says, oh, let's wake up Linda as well. And they run downstairs, and apparently Cindy sent a whole Excel spreadsheet list over to Santa. And as they come downstairs, they find Harley sitting under the tree. And Cindy's like, oh my God, it's exactly what I wanted. And she comes over and hugs Harley like, oh, I've always wanted one of these. And she's like, what? Huh? What is going on here? And the dad tries to pull Cindy off of Harley, and Linda has to take her into the next room. And Cindy's like, you give her back or I will make every day of your lives living hell from now on. You hear me? And he's like, okay, your daddy's just going to talk to the weird clown lady. So the dad takes her in the other room just being like, look, you broke into my home. Sure, whatever. I don't care about that. My daughter's taken a liking to you. She will absolutely go crazy. She's uncontrollable. Please, I will pay you whatever you want to just stay here for like a day or two and then like make her miserable so that way you can get out of this without me being the bad guy who has to take you away. And she's like, fair enough. So Harley's introduced to the girl again. It's like, oh, we're going to play and eat and sleep together forever. And the dad and Linda just go off and just like, look, let's just let them do their thing. We'll handle dinner. And then Cindy's like, hey, come on over. Let's open up some presents. And then she just starts kicking them. She just starts like wailing on them, just being like, oh, yeah, look, I'm opening and using my foot. And Harley was like, oh, yeah, this is fun. And then as they're trashing all the presents, Cindy pulls out a book of matches, just like, let's set something on fire. And Harley's like, I got a better idea. Let's eat all the candy canes that are on the tree and over the fireplace. And so they do. They eat like a total of 100 candy canes between them. And they throw up together, and it's like, oh, that's disgusting. Then Linda comes in saying, hey, we made turducken. It's turkey stuffed in a duck, stuck in a, all that stuff. And Harley and Cindy throw up again. So they take a bubble bath together. They lay out some clothes. And then we get to the heart of the story, which is apparently Cindy's mom is not Linda. Linda is her aunt, her mom's sister, who came to help after Cindy's mom died. Cindy's mom died on Christmas Day a few years ago because she got Cindy's dad a tie that he didn't end up liking, and she ran to the store to go exchange it on Christmas Day, and she got hit by a car and died. So now she blames her dad for that, and she's like, oh, I'm going to make him miserable, blah, blah, blah. And Harley lets loose the whole game of like, oh, I was supposed to make you miserable, but like, you're a messed up kid, so that's not that easy. And she basically says, look, you are a messed up kid, but I think it's mostly from trauma and stuff like that. And your dad is also probably hurting as well. So like, maybe we should take this Christmas to heal some of those emotional bonds, and you can stop being such a spoiled little stuck-up brat. And Cindy comes to the realization over time, like, yeah, I guess you're right, sure, whatever. But how do we do it? How do we kickstart the process? And Harley's like, I have an idea. So we see Linda and the dad sitting at the dinner table, getting ready for dinner. And then from upstairs, Harley is like, they're just arguing with each other, and it's clearly fake. And she's like, oh, you're the worst toy ever. Get out of the house. And Harley's like, oh, yeah, who's going to make me? And she's like, my wonderful father. And Harley's like, oh, yeah? What's your wonderful father going to do now that I have an axe? And all of them react like, you have an axe? And she's like, and it's hungry for blood. So she starts swiping at the kid, starts attacking the kitchen table. The dad uses the dinner plate to block a blow and then throws her into the tree. Cindy picks up the axe, hands it to the dad, and just like, you get out of my house now, and or I'll call the police and they'll take you away for good. So Harley gets out. The dad gives her the money. It's like $6,000, and she's like, oh, this is good for all the fixins. And he's like, what, you're getting some dinner sides? Like, is that what's the fixins? It's like, no, I'm fixing the dogs and cats. Get it? So then Cindy calls back being like, hey, thanks for making my dad like stick up for me and whatnot, and I promise I'll be a good daughter from now on. I'll take care of him real good. So Harley says, good job. She goes home, and then as she gets home, all of her friends are there to wish her a Merry Christmas. So it's a solid first story. I think the art style is sometimes a little bit, I don't want to say lacking, but it just feels a bit unfinished in places. I don't know how better to describe it. Like, there's not a lot of complex shading or dynamic stuff or anything like that. It's just a standard style. Very cartoony, I guess is the best way to say it. So overall, it's fine. I'll give it like a 7. Next up, we get a story called Get Your Cheer Out of My Ear with art by Brandt Peters, and Amanda Connor also helped on this. And we open up with a small little bug who apparently he hibernates 363 days a year, but when he comes out of hibernation, he climbs into your ear and starts humming Christmas music for 2 days straight. And we see him jump into Harley's ear, and he just starts humming Christmas music. And Harley's like, what? What is going on? This lady with a dog walks by, and she's like, little puppy, you have sensitive dog hearing. Can you hear the Christmas music in my ear? And the woman walking the dog is like, let go of my dog, please. Then all of a sudden, a policeman gets involved. Harley's like, officer, thank God, I'm so happy you're here. Do you hear someone humming Jingle Bells? Wait a minute, now it's 12 days of Christmas. What the hell's going on? And so she starts just climbing all over the cop. The cop tries pulling a gun. Harley manages to accidentally disarm him and then starts running into a convenience store through the glass window and just like, oh, the pipers are piping. Make them stop piping. And she runs into a mall, up to a mall Santa, and says, old man, if you have to grant any one wish this year, please grant mine. Stop the humming. It's invaded my brain. And Santa's like, oh, I think I can help. And he bends Harley over his knee, and there are kids with their parents blocking their eyes in the background. So that gives you an idea. And he licks a candy cane and says, now this might tickle. And he shoves it into her ear, and the little humbug inside stops and bites onto the candy cane, to which Santa extracts it and says, yeah, it's a humbug. It hums for 2 days and it drives you crazy, but like, it loves candy canes, so now it's free. And Harley's like, oh, thank you so much. How can I ever thank you? And he's like, well, when you came up to me, you said that you would try to stay off the naughty list for a whole year, but you can buy me dinner if that'll be easier. And apparently the only thing that's open on Christmas Eve is a Jewish deli, so they go there. That one's... The art style is the most stylistic. I don't know even how to describe it. It's like almost anime, but like not. It's very like watercolor as well. It's such a strange style. Not bad though. I think that one probably is closer to a 6.5. Just not a lot to work with there. And the last one is Killin' Time with art by Darwyn Cooke. And we see Harley wakes up New Year's Eve with a gray hair, and Tony's like, yeah, blame Father Time. And she's like, what? Who? It's like, oh, Father Time. He's anthropomorphization or whatever of time itself, and then there's New Year's baby that comes in, and it's just to represent time passing and how none of us can escape it. And she's just like, nobody may be able to beat time, but I can beat everything and everyone. So she reaches into her patient files for the assisted living home she works at, and she finds Harold Time, and she's like, this must be Father Time, and he's definitely going to kick the bucket soon. So she gets dressed. She takes a bunch of her dogs as like sled dogs, and she runs out the door before the New Year's party. And as she arrives at the nursing facility, she just lets all the dogs go loose. They all just start running rampant through the nursing home. We see Harley waits on the elevator, And inside is a couple that's holding a tiny baby named Lillian. And she's like, oh my God, it's so adorable. That's great. And the parents are like, oh yeah, we just wish that she would stay this age forever. And Harley's like, I'm working on that. Give me a minute. So she runs out the door, runs into Harold Time's room. And it's like, you're Father Time, right? I got a bone to pick with you. You're giving me gray hairs. And I'm here to make sure that you can't let anyone get older. And he's like, yeah, you got the wrong room. So apparently something Tony said is about him having a clock that like ticks down, and so she dives into his bed searching for it, and then all of a sudden the family from the elevator run in and just like, Grandpa, what's wrong? And Grandpa's freaking out. Harley pops out saying, hey, I'm looking for the old man's clock. It's a suggestive book. So the mother faints, the baby gets caught by the dad, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, that's your grandson? It's like, it's my great grandbaby, yeah. And he's like, oh, Lillian's the New Year's baby. That's great. And the dad mentions something about a pacemaker, and she's like, so it's hidden in his chest. I knew it. And he's just like, well, what are you talking about? And Harley explains the whole thing of like, New Year's, old year, blah, 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 Father Time, and only I can stop time from passing. And the father just yells, just being like, none of that is true. You're absolutely insane. And it's impossible to stop time. We're all getting older, all of us, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. And Harley starts like crying a little bit. But then the old man chimes in being like, hey, it's not that bad. Like, the reason I'm okay with being old and on death's door is because, like, look at my family. I've done everything I wanted to do with life. That's good. I don't fear the end. And then the baby reaches up and plucks out the gray hair, to which Harley's like, oh my God, you got rid of my gray hair. It's a New Year's miracle. Yeah, you're part of my family. And they're like, please, God, no. So she's like, I'll invite you guys to the party later, but I got to get back. See ya. And the old man Time is like, oh God, please let me die before that. So she runs back out. She calls for animals, but nobody's answering. One of the nurses is like, oh yeah, take a look. And all of the animals have cuddled up next to the old people throughout the nursing facility. They're all just keeping them company. And Harley's like, all right, well, I'll see you all later. And as she walks outside, she said, this is going to be the best New Year's ever. As we see a mugging, a homeless guy on fire, another homeless guy frozen, and a helicopter crashing. So, yeah. Darwyn Cooke's art style, top tier. It looks great. I'll give you that. Story itself, it's Harley Quinn. I wish I had more to talk about with this stuff. It is absolutely a love it or hate it. And I'm like kind of just straddling the line, but landing more on the I don't much care for it side. But I can see the humor in it. And there are sometimes jokes that do work, but like, for it to get an 80-page special, I just don't think it's worth it. I think that there's other stuff I'd much rather be reading. So if this really tickles your funny bone, so be it. This particular story, I'm going to say, is probably a 7. It's just, I don't know. This whole book just wasn't for me. I don't know how much it cost. I don't know how much it would have. Maybe this is like a $5.99 book or something like that, but I don't see it being worth it. Green Lantern Corps number 37, written by Van Jensen, art by Bernard Chang. This is the next part of the Godhead storyline, and last time, I don't know, man, like, a lot of stuff happened. I think the only major thing is that the Indigo tribe betrayed the Green and Yellow Lanterns, and we find out why this issue. So we open up with Highfather talking to Indigo 1, basically saying, hey, thanks for betraying them. Are you sure you want to bail? You sure you want to bounce? Because you'd be a great asset in my war with Darkseid. And Indigo One's like, look, we like your plan. We think that, control is a good thing because the Indigo rings control the darker impulses of the Indigo tribe because we're all like murderers and stuff. But if you gave us godhood, we'd probably go on a murder spree. So best we don't have that. And he's like, fair enough. Here's the ring I stole back from you guys. Bye. And then Indigo tribe just boom tubes away. We then go to Malhedron, who I believe was battling against Guy and Simon Baz, and has captured them both on the planet. And he comes with the Highfather and says, like, hey, by the way, I did this stuff. And Highfather's like, awesome, cool. So Then Highfather goes out and just like, all right, look, we're not ready to quite start the attack yet. Orion's doing something over at the Source Wall in the main Green Lantern book. But yeah, we're not going to jump yet. And that is because you, Malhedron, do not remember the history of my fight with Darkseid. Like, when this happens, it's going to be messy, and I'm not making the same mistake again of just jumping into it. So then Ugur, I think his name is, shows up. Sorry, Uga. And he says he's got a whole bunch of other Green Lanterns to drop off. And so he brings them over to Highfather, and they immediately are just like, screw you, man, we're Green Lanterns, we're going to kick your ass. And he's like, check this out. And he pulls out the White Lantern staff thing that he's made, and he blasts them with the energy. And we see that their Green Lantern willpower fades away as they are left there kneeling before Highfather. And he's like, awesome, open the next cell. So the cell that contains Sinestro and John Stewart and the rest of the Corps, they bottom drops out on that, and it allows Sinestro and John right in front of them. And Sinestro's just like, big mistake, man. Rule number 1, you can't scare a Yellow Lantern. And then John chimes in. He's like, rule number 2, we're never going to back down. So John still has the shield that the weapon forger made for him, and he throws that at Uga while Sinestro makes a giant tiger construct, I guess, and they start trying to fight, but immediately we find that the Green Lanterns that were blasted before come up, and they're like, oh, it is our honor to serve Highfather, it is our duty, that is what we do, we serve Highfather. And John's like, oh my god, you've taken away their free will, what the hell? So Highfather then explains, okay, look, on Earth, Earth Zero, main Earth, whatever you want to call it, Darkseid fought there and he got his ass beat. That's crazy. That shouldn't have happened, but because it did, it is absolutely something special. So we're going to go there, we're going to subjugate all your heroes into following our will, and then we're going to use that to take out Darkseid. That's the plan. And you see Malhedron go, and so Darkseid, or Highfather's like, all right, well, now I'm just going to change you guys over, and you will bow to my will. And Sinestro and John like quip at each other for a bit, but then as Highfather's about to shoot his beam at them, Malhedron puts on his helmet, steps in the way, and blocks the beam. And immediately it's just like, whoa, man, I rescued you from Darkseid and you're standing against me? And he's like, hey, man, you rescued me because the dude was a tyrant. He didn't let anyone disobey him, and you're literally doing the exact same thing. So, yeah, I'm not a fan of that. So they declare him a traitor, and he's like, all right, well, I made my choice. And so he boom tubes out with John, St. Walker, and Sinestro to some undisclosed location. And they're immediately like, who the hell are you, man? Like, we don't even know who you were. You just showed up and saved us. And he's like, well, look, I've got my own backstory. I didn't want to see him abuse his power. I get it. And Sinestro's just like, cool, great. But we're still on your planet, man. I don't like it. You got to get us back to our universe, and then we'll be able to deal with stuff. And Malhedron's like, look, I'm not going to help you fight against Highfather. I've already stood up against him once, but I can put you back in your universe. And Sinestro's like, cool, great, let's do it. John, however, says he's going to stay behind. Sinestro's going to go in, and John's like, hey, man, my family's in that universe. Please protect it. And Sinestro's like, yeah, all right, whatever. So St. Walker chimes in, and he's like, all right, well, I guess it's good to hide here in this alternate universe until Pal shows up with reinforcements. And John's like, what do you mean hide out, man? We're going to go fight. That's literally what we're going to do. Like, he's turning Green Lanterns into drones. We got to stop him. And St. Walker's like, but I don't have any hope. And then John tells him the story about Noah and the Ark, and basically says, like, God once flooded the earth. And then he said, oops, my bad. I don't like the fact that I did that, so I promise I'm never going to do it again. And he basically says, like, yeah, God accepts that people aren't perfect and they're doing whatever, and that's what gives us hope. It's a stretch, but whatever. And he says, look, I'm not asking you to fight against Highfather, Malhedron, but I do need some help with transportation. And Malhedron's like, okay, but you're going to, like, straight up die. And he's like, oh, have a little hope. So we then see that the next one about to be turned is Kilowog, and Kilowog's just like, bring it on, you poozer. So he gets down on his knees, and then John Stewart is on a high rise with a Green Lantern construct of a sniper rifle, and he's like, I am the greatest assassin from my universe, and I will be hiding in your city, and I will kill your people, and you will least expect it, and that is what you have to look for. No one will be safe. And Highfather's like, the hell, man? And he just like waves his hand, and John just goes flying. And John gets back together. He calls him up, and he's just like, "Hey, you didn't save anyone from my planets or anything like that. You sends them all to death. Why should I spare your people?" And Highfather's like, "Dude, you are playing in a bigger playground than you could possibly imagine. Uga, could you just go like stomp him real quick?" And he's just like, "Yeah, totally." So Uga goes up, he brings along his hammer, John still got the shield, and he's like, the shield is the strongest thing in the universe, you can't possibly break it. And he was like, really? Let's try that out. And so he punches John in the face, and then smashes his hammer against the shield, and it breaks. It just shatters in half. And he's like, told you my hammer's stronger. But because he had to like throw the hammer to get it to smash through the shield, John's like, yeah, and now I got your hammer. So he just picks it up, smashes Uga in the face, and keeps on wailing on him for a while. And he's like, bro, I would have accepted that you were under Highfather's, like, I don't know, spell, whatever you want to call it, his thrall, but I saw the look on your face when you were killing people when we fought earlier. You enjoyed it. And so I'm going to enjoy beating you up like this. And so Malhedron shows up, and he's like, all right, yeah, you're doing a good job. You're doing a great job. You managed to beat this one guy, so yeah, it's going to be fine. John's like, yeah, well, Highfather's going to send more generals, so let him say that we're not going to run from any fight. And we see the three of them, St. Walker, John, and Malhedron, boom tube out, as John says, this is only getting warmed up, this insurgency. So, it's all right. It does feel like it is doing something. It does have some forward motion. It doesn't feel like a skippable part of the story. We have Malhedron joining and all that sort of stuff. So it does actually manage to play on things that were set up in other parts of the book. I think my only real critique here is that I don't quite understand the character motivations of like who wants to go where and why they're doing certain things. That part still feels very unmotivated. Like Sinestro says, send me back to the main universe. His reasoning in the book is weak and flimsy. It just feels like, and he's going to show up in the Green Lantern part, so therefore he needs to be at that point. He needs to be back in the planet on that part. So I could complain a little bit more about that, but mostly I did enjoy this issue. I think it did a fantastic job with the Malhedron character. I'm curious how long he's going to be sticking around post this event. Odds are he's going to die in like 3 issues, but you know, we can hope. We can see where it goes. For all in all, I think I'm going to give this one, I'll give it a solid 8. I think that it is earned that. It is a very well written issue, and art style's a little hit or miss at places, but mostly hits for me. Batgirl number 37, written by Brendan Fletcher and Cameron Stewart, art by Babs Tarr and also maybe Cameron Stewart? It's according to DC Wiki. I don't know if that's true. Anyway, so last issue we had, there turns out to be a fake Batgirl running around and is spreading misinformation to like villains saying, hey, come and get me. This issue picks up with seemingly normal Batgirl riding in a car with a bunch of, I'm going to call them debutantes, as much as that is a completely outdated word, and they are all over like Instagram. They're driving a fast car and they're drinking, and apparently they stole a bunch of stuff from some rich famous person. And they're taking pictures for the gram and all that. They're sideswiping vehicles and just like, oh my god, this is so cool. Batgirl, we didn't think you would be so cool that you would come in and help us like totally steal people and all that. So we thought you'd try to stop us, but this is awesome. So one of them gets a Molotov cocktail ready to throw at an old couple as they go down the street. And then all of a sudden, the front of the car gets hit by some sort of bat gadget, and the car freezes up, goes on the brakes. And Batgirl looks up in the sky and says, girls, I don't have a great feeling about this. And we see a shadowy figure swoop in, grab Batgirl, and swing down a nearby alley. And wouldn't you know it, it's the real Batgirl. This one we've been following in the car is a fake Batgirl. And she's like, I don't know what you're doing, lady, but you are messing with my reputation here. And Barbara, as I'm going to call her instead of real Batgirl, starts kicking fake Batgirl in the face. And she's like, oh, you're ruining it. And he's like, yeah, that's the point. So at that point, we see the debutantes come in. They throw the Molotov cocktail, which gives fake Batgirl just enough time to escape. And as they think that she is the same Batgirl the whole time through, Barbara then comes up, gets them all tied up, and leaves them for the police. So we see her talking to... I am completely blanking on, is it Kadir? That's it. He is looking at the pictures that she took, and she's just like, oh yeah, look, if you want to get your reputation back, you got to be in front of the camera as well. Like, you show yourself when you get the bad guys. That's how people are going to get you. And she's just like, whatever, this works for me. So he pulls out a crime-fighting phone, which is a smartphone case that is waterproof, impact-proof, and has a super-powered flash that essentially works as a stun grenade. And she's about to, test it out by taking a picture of him, and she's like, whoa, no, seriously, I will be blinded for, at least 2 minutes if you do that. So, at that point, she asks if there's any leads on who the fake Batgirl is. He says something about, she likes to party, live dangerously. There is a artist apparently known as Daguerreotype who has an art show opening this weekend, and she's definitely the type to show up. And Batgirl's like, who the hell's Daguerreotype? So we cut to the Daguerreotype event. Turns out that whoever the roommate is that works for the Hook app, she is able to get tickets to this high-profile event. We also have Dinah, Alicia, and... or not Alicia. What's the name of the... No, it is Alicia. Yeah, sorry. Anyway, they go into the place. We also pass by the two co-workers at the college, and one of them's like, oh my god, Babs, you look so attractive in that dress. Not that I was looking. So at that point, she goes into the art museum, and it turns out that the entire exhibit is Batgirl. And it's all these very suggestive poses and very I don't want to say sexualized because it's not entirely, but it is very... it's that artsy type of sexualized, you know what I mean? Anyway, so Black Canary just starts laughing because she's like, oh man, this is the best thing ever. I love the fact that you are so embarrassed by this. And she's just like, I feel more than embarrassed. I feel violated. This is messed up. So at that point, Alicia's just like, oh man, I can't believe Batgirl would sell out like this. And Barbara's like, I don't think it's the real Batgirl, Alicia. To which Black Canary's then just like, oh no, it totally is. She's totally a sellout. Absolutely, 100%. So at that point, we then see that there is a painting nearby of Batgirl, but she is in a wheelchair. And apparently the title of the piece is Vulnerable, to which both Dinah and Barbara are like, what? How would they know this? That's not right. So we see Dagger's agent is talking to someone on the phone backstage, saying how many pieces they sold that night. Barbara comes out dressed as Batgirl and just like, hey, where's Daguerreotype? And she's like, I don't know. It's all done anonymously. He just drops them off in a smart cab. Hey, could I get you to sign some pieces? And so she runs off. She hacks into the smart cab website in order to deduce where he lives. Ultimately, it's literally just one panel. I do say it's really hard to determine because of stuff we'll get to later. Everyone says he, so I'm going to run with that. But regardless, she goes to the address and she picks up a book on American Sign Language that was left out in the open. And she thinks back to all the paintings and she thinks about the hands in the paintings, which turns out were saying the words below Burnside Bridge, 10 p.m. So she goes there, she calls up Dinah for backup. Dinah's not answering. And then immediately she gets jumped by a couple of henchwomen. She immediately knocks him out, and in comes fake Batgirl in a golden bejeweled suit. And she's like, you have the public eye. Everyone loves Batgirl right now, but you're doing nothing with it, and you're so boring, and you have thrift shop materials. You suck. I'm going to take your Bat brand, and I'm going to make it something truly influential. So they go up on top of a bridge and basically argue about their philosophical things about social media or whatnot, but also just smack talking each other of your mama was trashy as that outfit, and immediately fake Batgirl's like, ooh, and here I thought we were bat fighting. So at that point, Barbara manages to swing in, grabs hold of fake Batgirl's cowl, rips it off, and sees that the person under the mask is Dagger type, to which he then pulls out a gun and says Kanye wants me to collaborate on his next music video. He takes a shot. Batgirl goes over the bridge down at the water below. He assumes that she was shot, but ultimately she wasn't. But her cowl does get knocked off and goes into the water, so she's unable to get it. We then see that Dagger type has set up an immediate, quick expo to reveal Batgirl's identity, and it's immediately sold out. Batgirl's trying to get another cowl made, but no luck. She's going to have to go in her civvies, and she manages to get up to the front, and the speakers click on just like, oh, you love the icon. You've seen her, but you weren't give enough. Now I will give you the true identity of Batgirl. And then Dagger type comes out, and it's like, it's me. I'm Batgirl now. And everyone's like, what? Aren't you already famous? Why are you trying to steal Batgirl? And it's like, I'm not trying to steal Batgirl. This is the opening movement for my grand artistic statement. And everyone's just like, dude, seriously, don't jack her style. What are you doing, man? And he's just like, what? No, this is the moment where the brand Batgirl begins. It's like, brand? Jesus, you've gone corporate. You suck, dude. So he starts freaking out, starts yelling at the audience. They start like laughing at him, throwing stuff at him. He pulls out a gun again, and he aims it at the crowd. The crowd all scatter. Barbara, however, gets on stage, covers her face, uses the flash stun thing on her smartphone to blind Dagger type, and then closes the curtains as she takes him back and interrogates him. And just like, why did you do that wheelchair shot at the gallery? And he's like, what? Oh, you're Batgirl. I don't know. They said they wanted the wheelchair shot. And she's like, who's they? And he's like, I don't know. I just got instructions and a bunch of money. So the cops show up at that point. We get introduced to a cop named Liam Powell, who I believe is the cop that was introduced in the Future's End issue of Batgirl that Batgirl ended up marrying. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure. And he's like, oh, hey, you're the commissioner's kid. Oh, you're super cute and all that. And also, did you just tackle this dude? That's freaking awesome. She's like, oh, yeah, I'm Babs. Call me Babs. My friend calls me Babs. So he says he'll see her around, and she's like biting her lip like, oh, God, I hope so. So then we get the last page, which is Dinah taking a picture of Batgirl on top of the Burnside Bridge. And she's like, fine, whatever. I hope you get 1 million likes. And she's like, no, it's not about that. It's about owning who I am. It's important that the people of Burnside see the real me. So I'm going to take control of that. I choose how I'm seen. And we see on her pictograph app, she's opened up a Batgirl of Burnside gram page. Okay. It's fine. It's all right. I don't know. I bounce back and forth between this because I spent so long of this book so far having Batgirl be like, I would say mid-20s. I would say that's fair. This feels a lot more early 20s to me. This feels a lot more carefree and like, I don't know, it feels like the character has regressed in a lot of ways. It's not a bad characterization per se. I like the way that things are getting done. The storytelling is very succinct. It's very well told. I don't know, I'm still adjusting to this major character shift. This thing of college girl Batgirl instead of, oh, I've already moved out and like I'm doing things Batgirl, you know? Art style, it's fine, it's good. I mean, it's definitely up to taste. I don't think it's for everybody, but I do enjoy it. I don't know. It's just, I think maybe a more slow turn would have been enough for me. But like, especially when you get in this whole thing of like, and her big reveal at the end of this is she opens an Instagram page for Batgirl. I'm like, I get it. You're trying to appeal to a certain demographic here, but as a demographic of a 30-year-old male, it ain't me. And so it's hard for me to relate to. I'm not saying that it's bad. It's not bad. It's just hard for me to relate to. So all in all, I think I'm probably going to end up giving this one still I'll give it a 7. I think My only thing that I'm saying for next issue to be able to get it a little bit higher is I want there to be a bit more of a reveal as to who's actually behind it. If we just keep on doing this storyline of, and someone else paid to make this happen, I'm going to get a bit tired of it. So I'm hoping we at least get some clues in the next issue as to who is behind the taking down of Batgirl. Justice League United number 7, written by Jeff Lemire, art by Neil Edwards. So last issue, Ultra started becoming Infinitus, or whatever its name is, and then Legion Lost showed up. And I think I commented last issue that, like, that doesn't make sense, and I hope they explain exactly how they fix that in this issue. And the answer is no, they don't. We just run with it. So forgive me that there's like 30 characters here. I'll see if I can remember all of them. But Ultra's still blasting into deep space, letting all of these constructs, these energy beings coming out of it that the Justice League and Legion are fighting against. And I gotta say, on this page, we have all of the different characters get a headshot and saying what their name is in order to keep track of them. But they still couldn't fit in everybody. There is at least one member of the Legion Lost that does not get a headshot, and that is Dawnstar, who on the very next page gets a full page like to do something, but is never once named. So you have too many characters. I'm just going to roll with that. Regardless, we see a few interesting pairings. Animal Man and Timberwolf get paired up. Stargirl and Wildfire. We see that seriously, I hate all these people. Tyrock knows Green Arrow's identity, and he's like, but how? My identity's not public. And he's like, oh, but we're from the future. And he's like, so it will be? Okay, crazy. So at that point, Miabin, who's next to Ultra, yells out like, hey, stop please. And Biff uses his weird tentacle powers to like choke her out, and that's where Dawnstar comes in and just kicks him in the chest. So they start fighting for a little bit as Black Mass picks up Ultra, gets next to Biff, and then they all teleport out, and seemingly Hawkman goes as well. So at that point, like, they're surrounded, constructs are coming in, and then all at once everyone gets teleported, or at least it looks like the Legion Lost and the Justice League United get teleported in. I can't remember if the Legion of Superheroes was already in the other location. Regardless, they all get teleported in to Ran, and we get the whole thing of like, okay, well, we've got a bunch of superheroes here. We got to figure out what we're supposed to do. What's going on? And immediately Martian Manhunter's like, look, I have a bond with Ultra. I can try to see if I can contact him from that far away. It's going to be tough, so I need some concentration. So he taps in, he talks to Ultra, and he's like, hey, fight against Biff. Don't do what he says. And she immediately, Ultra's like, but I'm scared. Like, I'm growing, and I don't know. I'm a growing boy. What's this strange hair growing in places? And Biff steps in and is just like, hey, Ultra, I can make you super powerful, and he wants to put you in a lab, so don't listen to Martian Manhunter. I can help you. And Martian Manhunter's like, he's a liar and a fraud and a con artist. Swear to God, Ultra, don't you listen to this guy. So Ultra, in his mental space, literally feels like he's being pulled between these two sides, and so he manages to kick John out of his mind, and John recovers. He's like, okay, well, Biff has got some stuff going on. Like, we thought he was just a shapeshifter. He's apparently a telepath as well. He's got some other stuff. We need to stop underestimating him. So at that point, Green Arrow's like, okay, so we seriously need to consider the fact of, like, we might have to kill this kid. If he just sided with Biff just then, that might be a problem. And Stargirl's like, okay, everyone on the side of let's kill the kid, raise your hands. Everyone on the side of let's do something the Justice League would actually do, raise your hands. Or keep your hands down. And so everyone keeps their hands down. It's like, well, it's settled then. So at that point, they all decide exactly where they need to go. There is the giant portal that's letting out the constructs, and so basically everyone goes there. All of the major heavy hitters are doing that. Additionally, we have, what is it? I think it's Martian Manhunter. No, sorry, it's Miabin and Supergirl and Wildfire I think it's them, that are going to go to Bith and do what they can to get the kid before everything else goes back. So we then see Bith on a planet with black mass and all that, and it's just like, all right, he's run out of energy. I've run out of energy to help him do it. We got to get this kid basically right up to the black hole. And Black Mass is like, we're not about to fly into a black hole, right? And he's like, no, you can teleport yourself out. Take Hawkman with. I'll go in with the kid. Everything will be fine. And so they say their rallying cry and they head up there. We see Saturn Girl, in order to help the non-space breathers breathe in space, gives them all Legion flight rings. Additionally, they cover the fact that if Alana has one and then she trades places with Adam Strange, that Adam will then just choke out in space. So they've also beamed a ring down for him at the same time. And so the Justice League and the Legion Lost all head out into space, and they all start moving towards the Rift because, wouldn't you know it, that's also where the spaceship is headed as well. So they make their way out, and it's basically just like, here's a few pairings that are interesting. So like I said, we have Animal Man and Timberwolf. We have Green Arrow and Tellus, who are apparently a thing. Manhunter, Wildfire, Mon-El, and Supergirl are all a thing. So everyone's doing stuff while Brainiac 5 is trying to figure out a way to seal up the Rift. Meanwhile, we see that the ship is flying in at top speeds. They recognize that Manhunter, Mon-El, and Supergirl are going to cause problems. So we see that as they're flying towards a black hole, the back of the ship just explodes, causing them to all scatter, and out comes Hawkman with a giant-ass 90s gun, who is saying basically like, oh, the end is here. This is where you die. Okay. Look, there is a panel in this where Green Arrow, I think, says it best, and that's when he's talking to Tellus. And he says, oh, hey, yeah, you did a good job there, like, Telvis. And he's like, oh, well, my name is Tellus. And he's like, oh, sorry, there's like 30 of you I gotta remember. And I never associated more with that. And there's like another panel in here is like, oh, geez, do you think we could cram any more superheroes in this room? And then one of the Legionnaires is like, this thing got Duplicate Girl isn't here. And a man was like, is Duplicate Girl a real thing? So, look, long story short, there's a lot of characters. And I get it. It's tempting. You want to play with all the toys in the toy box. I understand that. But, like, there's a reason that the Legion Lost book was focused on, like, 6 people. And that is because you can't do introductions for 27 different people all in this book. Like, for anyone who didn't read Legion Lost beforehand, you don't have a damn clue what Tellus does. They introduced the character of Gates in, like, the page with all the head things. I don't think Gates shows up in this entire book. I'm pretty sure he's just dead. Like, he's one panel right there where they introduce him, and that's it. So, it's not a bad concept. Ultimately, whatever's going on with Ultra, I think is a fine enough concept. But, like, you needed to just keep it to the Legion. You didn't need to bring in the Legion Lost. Like, I understand it's a cool moment at the end of the last issue, but it makes the writing of this so much more difficult. Yeah, no, I don't really have much more to say beyond that. Honestly, I think the plot's a little bit basic at this point. It just feels like it's going to be a thing of, like, Ultra, find your humanity, don't be a dick. And then, like, yeah, that's where we're going to go. If it isn't that, great, but it has all the hallmarks of that. So I'm going to say this is a... I want to say 7, but it doesn't feel right. I think I'm going to dock it down to a 6.5, honestly. It was too fast of a read. It didn't feel like anything actually happened. And then, like, I felt like it wasn't fleshing out any of the characters. It has too much stuff going on right now. So yeah, 6.5. World's Finest number 29, written by Paul Levitz, art by Jed Dougherty. So this is still continuing on with the Red Tornado, Lois Lane, just recapping things from Batman and Superman's history on Earth 2, and last issue was them as, like, I don't know, 9 years old, give or take. This one, they're heroes. It's modern day, or may as well be. So we see Lois has gotten a tip about some sort of terrorist cell out in Gotham, and so she's going to investigate it, and she's like, oh, before the invasion came and all that stuff, like, I went out and I investigated this sort of stuff, and admittedly, it was a little bit scary. It was a little bit daunting and whatnot. This was the darker side of town, but ultimately, I wanted to go out and get the tail. And as she's doing so, she comes across Batman. And she's like, oh, I was shocked that he was suddenly there, but like, it seemed like he was assessing me, seeing if I was a threat or whatever. And he just barks out, go. And she's like, whoa, hold on now. I have journalistic rights to be here, and I want this story. There's this terror cell that's been committing robberies. And Batman just runs off. He doesn't want to hear it. He doesn't care. So we then see that Lois follows him, goes to a room where there's a broken down door, and inside is a terrorist cell, but they are being beat up by Catwoman. And we see that they have a bunch of diamonds and whatnot. Lois takes pictures on her flip phone, and Catwoman just knocks out the rest of the terrorist cell without much of a problem. So she gathers up all the diamonds and says, oh, well, these are definitely coming with me. Goodbye. And Batman grabs her hand as she's putting them in her little pouch and just like, hey, no, leave the jewels. We need to talk. And immediately Catwoman's like, how about no? Bye. And so she flips out the sunroof window. Lois just watches it happen from the ground, just like, oh, yeah, that cat seems like she could bail out of anywhere, but this alpha male of a Batman is not going to let her out of his sight. So then she says, and while Batman may be cool, I was already with Superman at this point, and he was doing something even cooler, because he was out in space, and there was some alien tech that was detected as coming in towards the Earth, and he started punching it and beating it up, thinking it might be from Krypton. It wasn't. But one of those things, when it exploded, it actually managed to cause him pain, and the other one managed to fall to Earth, so he fell next to it, and he landed on Paradise Island, Themyscira. And when he woke up, there was a sword at his neck. It was Wonder Woman, who says, silence male, and immediately he's just like, okay, and Lois describes, like, he's so cute when he's flustered. You got the Smallville vibes. You wouldn't even believe it. But Wonder Woman, like, presses the tip of the sword into his neck, and it actually draws blood. And he's like, whoa, okay, hold on. You speak Greek, right? I heard the Greek thing going on. Look, I get what you're doing here. I just don't want to take your orders. So he stands up, gets eye to eye with Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman's just like, our island hasn't any male visitors. Why did you invade? And he's like, I did not invade. I crashed down onto this planet trying to save it from alien tech, and I just happened to land here. I need to find it before it harms your people. And Wonder Woman's like, all right, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm willing to buy that. All right, I grant you your life. You can get off the island. And he's like, excuse me. 1, you were never going to grant me my life. 2, I need to find that tech before it hurts people. I need to protect your island. And she's like, we don't need your protection. And she grabs hold of the sword again, holds it out at him. And she's like, look, we've slain demigods before. Now get off this island. And he's like, look, you don't understand. And then he looks over and sees the Amazons have already taken care of the alien drone thing. And Wonder Woman's like, I'm thinking you don't understand, bro. But bye now. And so he flies off the island, and she's like, yeah, go back to your man space, you stupid boy, guy, dude. So then we go over back to Gotham, or the other side of Metropolis. Hard to tell. And we see that Catwoman's just jumping over rooftops, totally getting the drop on Batman, never able to be caught, until she just stops suddenly. And Batman comes up being like, hey, you're doing pretty good. And she's like, yeah, thanks, you yourself. So they jump for each other a little bit, and as Batman is about to try to like wrap her up with a bat rope, she just jumps off the building, and she's like, oh, better luck next time, Batman. And then Superman swoops in and just grabs her by the belt and being like, hey, Batman, did you drop this? I found something. And he's like, look, I was already in the neighborhood. I just figured I'd do a little favor for you so that you owe me later on. And Catwoman's like, hey, I'm still here. Can you let me go now? And just like, oh, nope. And he pulls out the jewels and says, I think these are what you're looking for. And he's like, no, not really. I was just wondering how they got in the hands of terrorists. And Catwoman's like, yeah, they belong to me. And he's like, oh, no, you're a thief. I don't think those jewels belong to you. And Batman just hands them back to her and be like, actually, yeah, they're totally hers. This is Selena Kyle. She's a noted figure in Gotham society. So, yeah, they were her jewels and they were stolen. And Superman's just like, oh, I'm very sorry. Here you go, and like sets her down and just like, yeah, well, I wasn't going to wait for the police to try to recover my stuff, so I did it myself. And she just walks over to Batman being like, and you, how am I supposed to count on you running around in your Halloween suit? And she calls him Mr. Wayne and then just dicks out. And Superman's just like, okay, are you going to tell me about how any of that happened at all? And Batman's just like, nah. So at that point, Superman's like, all right, whatever. Hey, I want to show you this. And he goes, flies to another building, grabs the drone, comes back. Apparently, he stole this from right underneath the Amazon's noses. Like, he just super speeded in, grabbed it, and then just flew out. And he's like, look, I need you to look at this. Do you recognize the metals on this? And he's like, no, is it not Kryptonian? He's like, no, it's something else entirely. But, like, they got crazy strong tech if they manage to hurt me. And then all of a sudden, Boom Tube opens up behind. And remember the crazy lady that's been trying to recruit Superman for the past 2 issues? She's back. The new god. She has a name later on. But regardless, her name is Intry. And she's like, hey, last time I saw you, you were only a child, Kal-El. But you were still welcome in the realm of God, so come on. And then they are just like, hey, we're ready to fight you. And she also claims ownership of the drone, so they're ready to fight. And she just bats them away, like no problem whatsoever. And Batman's like, well, if you came from our past, then you're a ghost waiting for your spot in hell. And she's like, hey, look, you prophecies say that weak little you will defy us one day, but like, I don't see how that's possible. But still, I should destroy you now before, like, you know, you might get the chance. And then Superman comes in being like, oh yeah, don't worry about him so much. And then just smashes her into the ground. And she's like, all right, you know what? Come with us. And I'm just going to forget about this, okay? You can make your own choices, choose divinity. And Superman's like, go to heck. I'm not kidding. He literally says, go to the blazes, which may as well just be that. So she goes back through the boom tube laughing. And this time Bruce is like, I'm sorry, do you want to explain how that happened? And he's like, I wish I could. I don't remember. So apparently he sits on top of the rooftop all night, just pondering over it, trying to remember this half-forgotten dream from when he was 9 years old. And Lois finds him and just like, oh, hey, are you all right? Like, I've never seen you this lost in thought. And he's just like, oh, yeah, it's just been really strange. Like, I vaguely remember this thing in, like, a cornfield with my mom, but, like, I can't get the whole thing. And she's like, well, why not just call your mom? Like, that, she could just wrap that up for you real quick. And he's like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. So they cuddle up on the roof, and Superman says, oh, well, I'm no god. I'm your man, and we'll get through all of this together. And then Red Tornado narration says, oh, if only we had Clark. Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit confusing, considering that the Wonder Woman in the last issue was, like, specifically told, hey, you need to care for this super kid and the Bat Kid. And then when she comes across Superman in the present day, she's like, screw you, get off my island. Like, you feel like they would have set that up to pay it off in the later issue, but whatever. Just looking at this one, it's a much better told story, I think, than the first two. I like it a little bit more. It's mainly just because, you know, it doesn't focus on, here's some stuff in the origin story that you need to know about over and over again. This is something that it's just, we've set up the entry stuff and we are pulling it ahead into modern day. And I think that's a little bit more interesting to me than having to go through their childhoods and origin stuffs over and over again. So yeah, I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 7. I think it's right around that area. It's still got the problem where it's an Earth 2 book while Earth 2 World's End is going on, and therefore it can't actually do anything of consequence. But if we're going to do a flashback sort of, here's the secret life of Batman and Superman, this is perfectly fine for that. New Suicide Squad number 5, written by Sean Ryan, art by Tom Derenick and Rob Hunter. So, last issue, the whole Russian mission didn't seemingly go so well, and now we are setting up with the few remaining members of the team that we have, and a few new ones as well. So, we open up with a lab in China that has a dude in a giant, you know, the test tube with all the liquids and stuff, like from Star Wars. They pull him down and are just like, hey, run some tests, make sure he's fine. I want a perfect product here. And they're like, perfect. This is the first one we've ever made. And it's like, well, that's why it's got to be perfect. So Then we go to Amanda Waller, and we just see her morning routine. She gets up, and her room is like completely Spartan. She showers, brushes her teeth, gets some breakfast, drives into work, and as she gets in, her secretary is like, "Oh, how was your weekend, Miss Waller?" And immediately Amanda's just like, "Hey, where's my updates? I should be getting updates about where the team is. Where are they doing right now?" It's like, "Oh, well, they just entered the country and they're on their way to the drop-off point." She's like, "Cool. I need updates on that stuff. Make sure I get those." Also, any word from Vic Sage? And she's like, "Oh, she's just complaining to the bosses in DC." It's like, "Yeah, cool, great, whatever. We're not waiting for him." And then Waller says, "Okay, and also, how is Lawton? Floyd, Deadshot." And she's like, "Oh, well, as long as I've heard that, he's making some improvement with the doctor." And Waller's like, "Okay, well, that I gotta see." So we then cut to Deadshot in physical therapy. He's barely able to walk, but the doctor's pushing him through and just like, "Hey, this isn't going to happen overnight. And please cool it with the pain pills." And he's just like, "Shut up, doc." So Waller comes in and it's just like, "Hey, how you feeling, man?" He's like, "Oh, I'll be ready for the next mission." She's like, "Who says I need you for the next mission?" And he's like, "Oh, come on. You lost Deathstroke. You need another guy who can shoot." And it's just like, "Yeah, well, you're the one who shot him." It's just like, "Yeah, but like, what was he even doing on the team to begin with? He betrayed all of us." And she's like, "Look, that wasn't me. That was a whole nother. He shouldn't have even been on there to begin with." So at that point, Waller's like, "Look, who'd you get to replace me?" And she says Captain Boomerang, to which Floyd gets very pissed off, just like, "Oh, come on. He throws a stick. What the hell? Who else is going along on this mission?" And Waller says the team consists of Manta, Harley, a new evil Flash, which is Daniel West, and a couple of ninja man-bats that they rounded up back during the Batman Incorporated days. So at that point, Deadshot asks, "Okay, what about Joker's daughter? Whatever happened to her?" And Waller literally points out, like, "We sent her over to Arkham, and then Batman Eternal happened. So whatever she's doing is her business." So at that point, she looks down and just like, "Look, are you certain you want to send Captain Boomerang? I can be ready." And she's like, "Yeah, no, whatever. Just, I need you back at 100%. You are no good to me broken." So we then cut over to the truck that is making its way through China, and Captain Boomerang's making some cracks about happy endings in a massage parlor or whatnot, and Black Manta's like, "Bro, look, our last mission ended because we weren't all on the same wavelength. We were disorganized. That is not going to happen again." And Boomerang's like, "Bro, I've been on Suicide Squads. That happens every single mission." And then Harley Quinn is just jamming out. She's like, "Have you guys heard the new Taylor Swift song? It's a freaking banger." And Manta's like, "You're not wearing headphones, Harley." And she's like, "Yeah, I know, right?" And immediately Boomerang's like, "See, you're not gonna be able to do this." So Waller calls up Black Manta as they arrive for a little bit, and she's like, "How's the team doing? How's everything going?" It's like, "Well, I mean, we haven't done anything yet, but it seems to be going decently. It's better than last time." And Waller asks about Reverse Flash because apparently his powers haven't been the same since his battle with the Flash, but they injected him with some stuff to get him back up to super speed. And he's like, "Well, we haven't seen him run, but he should be fine." So at that point, he questions how the Man-Bats are going to do. And it's like, that's fine. They were brainwashed. They'll listen to anybody. So we see the team approaching the facility they need to break into in China. And by team, I mean the Man-Bats come down from the skies and just slaughter all the guards with katanas. Outside of the facility, parked in a van, is the rest of the team. And they say, "All right, Man-Bats are distracting. Daniel West, go in, plant the explosives." So he runs over to the building, cuts through the fence around it, starts planting explosives on the outside. Meanwhile, Manta's trying to get Harley to focus up because she's supposed to be taking care of some of the other explosives, getting them going. And she's just sitting there like jamming out to this imaginary Taylor Swift song. And when Manta tries to control her, she's like, "Oh, shut up. You're not my real dad." And Boomerang's like, "You didn't know she's insane, right? Why did you think you could control her?" And he's like, "I don't know. We had a connection last time. She wasn't this crazy." And she's like, "Yeah. That's how crazy works. She goes through these little cycles." So the wall's been blown. The van peels its way in. Everyone starts running. And as they make their way inside, they come across this entire huge fleet of the purple pink test tubes filled with people in them. And Manta points out that these are superheroes. China is designing its own superheroes. So an alarm's going off, and Molly's like, man, this alarm's getting in the way of my tunes. And she punches a big red button on the wall, thinking it will turn it off. But of course, that just sets off the security measures, and we see all of the test tubes start breaking open. The things inside start crawling out, and the entire team is now facing down an army of horribly mutated looking super powered freaks. So yeah, pretty standard Suicide Squad story all in all. I think my only critique right now is that they didn't do a damn thing with Daniel West. Like, they gave him the line, "I shouldn't even be here," and that's it. Like, he does not have any more characterization, and I think that's fine for some characters. That's fine for, like, okay, you don't have too much going on with, like, Captain Boomerang. Like, he's enough of a base level that you don't need much characterization for him. But I think Daniel West, you pull in this reverse Flash thing, you then say, oh, he has this special injection that might make him act weird. Like, I want him to be more of a focus. Beyond that, I'm fine with the rest of it. Everything else seems to be going fine. I really like the Amanda Waller wake-up sequence, not because it actually does anything, but just because it's nice to see that. It feels like a more slower-paced moment that then balances out the fast-paced stuff at the end, and it just really shows the dichotomy of the two. So, all in all, fine enough issue. I think I am going to give it I'll go 7.5 on this one. I'm hopeful moving forward, and if we get some more characterization on Daniel West, I am all for it. Constantine number 20, written by Ray Fawkes, art by Jeremy Haun. So last issue was honestly one of the best issues of the series, and it was basically Constantine making his way back to his home on Earth 2, and then discovering his whole family, including himself, is still alive. So we open up this issue with a little flash forward. We see Constantine, he's, out of shape, things are going wrong, he's running for his life, and he sees the alternate version of himself being chased. His mom tells him, like, hey, you got to keep moving, son, you got to go. And the alternate version's like, no, I can't go on, I'm done. And we see as far as I can tell, a cop, or at least someone who has a tear gas canister, goes to fire it at the other John, and the real John jumps in the way, and he takes it in the side, and it, like, breaks a rib. But then we cut back in time, and we see right where we left off, him standing in the doorway, and he's like, yeah, I can't believe what I'm seeing here either. And he looks over and sees the other version of himself, but more importantly, he sees around the room, like, my mom's still alive, my dad's still alive, Chaz is here, Gaz, one of my best friends, and also Maureen, she's still alive, Jesus Christ. And then the other Constantine gets up, comes over, and he's just screaming bloody murder. He grabs hold of the Earth Zero Constantine and just, like, puts his hand around his throat, and then all of a sudden both of them get, like, a memory swap. They each see each other's histories, and I'm going to say Constantine when I mean Earth Zero, and I'm going to say John when I mean Earth 2, and I will mess that up. But regardless, Constantine points out how John's life was great. Like, everything was fine. The music career worked out. He got married to Maureen. Like, he was happy and loved. Whereas Constantine was, of course, put through hell, and everything was miserable, and he was always, like, alone his entire life. And he realizes, like, John's life was ordinary, and he was loved, and I was the one who's not real. Like, he's far more real than I am. Earth 2 may as well just be the real Earth. So, when the memory swap happens, they all sit down, they have a drink, and it's like, yeah, he's from another universe, and John says all this, so his parents trust him. He's like, I saw it all, but, like, their world doesn't have anybody dying. Like, it's a good world. It's not the apocalypse or whatnot. And he's trying to get back to his other place that isn't being invaded, and he's going to be able to take us. He's going to take us out of here. And John's dad is like, is that true? And Constantine's like, yeah. He's like, you can save us all? He's like, yeah. So as he's about to go into a bit more explanation, all of a sudden the windows bust in. If you remember, Oliver, too, is under the thrall of the Furies right now, so they are just murderous people all over the place. And as they're getting all the windows busted in, Constantine thinks once again about that voice in the sky, the whole care for nothing, hope for nothing. And we see him yell out as, I think it's Chaz, is about to beat up the intruder. He's like, no, you can't fight or else you'll just be taken over by the same rage. We just have to run. So they make their way out of the house. Constantine looks up in the sky and just like, oh God, friggin' apocalypse is up there. That's crazy. We gotta go. So we see them making their way down the street, and Constantine says, we gotta go away from people. All of a sudden, one of the neighbors' houses explodes, and Maureen is like, oh, that's the Chapman house. We should... And he's like, nope, they're dead. They're all already dead. Don't worry about it. And he gets another glimpse of that voice in the sky. And Constantine's like, look, I might be able to save these people, but I have to get the other John's soul in sync with mine so that it doesn't backfire again. But I need time to think, and I can't stop to think if I keep thinking of this damn voice in the sky. So we see just around her, too, stuff that's going on, or at least around the area. Like, everyone's killing each other. Everything's brutal. It's an absolute, like, Armageddon going on here. And we see the police have taken up basically sniper positions. They're just going in and shooting people as they're walking by. And that's where we open up with the original, with the one with the tear gas canister, and Constantine jumping in the way to save John's life. So Chaz comes in, uses a brick to attack one of the cops, manages to take him out, and doesn't care much about the tear gas because, of course, they were around for the labor riots of the 80s, so no big deal. Then, as Constantine is trying to get back to his senses after taking, a couple broken ribs, his dad comes over and is like, oh, if you're a superhero from your world, you better do a better job than that. And he pours some alcohol in his face and wakes him up. So they make their way to an old brick factory that is abandoned, and they actually manage to get like 10 minutes of peace and quiet. Maureen, who apparently in this universe is a nurse, which Constantine is like, you always talked about when you wanted to be a nurse before, the drugs. And Maureen's like, what about the drugs? He's like, don't worry about it. So she takes a look at John, Constantine gets them all bandaged up. And Constantine's like, all right, look, if we're going to do this, then we got to do this right. There's a planet up in the sky called Apocalypse. It's run by a dark god. But because it is a god, it thinks, it perceives, and therefore it can be tricked. And that's what we got to do in order to get back to the other universe. So they pull out some chalk, and they start on every flat surface of this factory, start making runes and sigils and stuff like that. And Constantine's like, yeah, as if we have a hope in hell of tricking a god. Like, I'm doing what I can here to give them a bit of hope. And they keep on doing all the sigils until finally, after hours of work, they manage to do all this huge, like, summoning circle looking thing. And the two Johns stand opposite of each other, and he's like, fine, we did everything you asked, what do we do now? And Constantine lights a cigarette, and he's like, all right, I'm going to tell you two things about real magic. One, you never get anything for nothing. There is always a cost. If we do this, I don't know what it's going to take from us, but it will take something from us that we are going to miss, and it is going to happen, but that will be what is necessary to get the job done. And two, any magic that we cast is going to attract other people who are spellbinders and stuff like that. They will come, they are going to come for looking for power or whatnot. It's just going to happen. Do not trust what they say. No matter what they promise you, don't trust them. And he says, all right, now that I told them the right kind of lies that will get the job done, it's time to finally start. And in the middle of the circle, he says, speak of the devil, and a portal opens up, and out of it comes Dr. Fate. And he says, hi, I saw you guys arriving. I'm here to help. So obviously Constantine has set them up to not trust Dr. Fate, which I'm sure will result in quite a big attack right there, or at least Fate being like, no, seriously, man, I'm trying to help you out. But who knows? Obviously, the Future's End book for Constantine did hint that Fate didn't actually do anything to help. He actually was a hindrance in a lot of ways. So I'm curious to see how this one's going to shake out. But ultimately, because of what's going on in World's End, there is a certain point that Constantine has to get to, and he's not there yet in his book. So we'll see what happens when we get there. All in all, I think this one is probably going to be it's still a solid, 8. Like, last issue was like a 9. It was really, really good because it kept leaning into this philosophical side of like, is John just a bastard? Like, can he turn it off? And he just can't. He can't stop doing the right thing for whatever reason. I like that aspect of it. This one still plays with it a little bit, but there's just a bit missing. I think the last couple pages where he just sits down, has a smoke, and explains the rules, I think that's some of the strongest stuff for me. I really like the way that that's just slow-paced, telling people, like, this is going to suck, and it's going to suck a lot, but we got to do it. Yeah, no, it's a great characterization piece for him as well, comparing and contrasting to the other John. So all in all, it's getting an 8 for me. I'm really enjoying this arc much more than I thought I would with an Earth 2 crossover. Klarion number 3, written by Nocenti, art by Trevor McCarthy. So last issue I said, hey, this issue ended with him being wrapped up in Zell's hair as they kissed, and I said, oh, I bet that won't amount to anything. They don't even acknowledge it in this. Like, he has one thing, I kiss Zell, her hair snaked around my neck, and then it's done. Like, they're separated, there's a big explosion, and something happened. What is it? They don't explain. But regardless, they're looking at each other, and apparently they blew up an eyeball collection that was nearby. So Zell's like, oh, help me pick this up, we gotta do that. By the way, I just realized that Zell is short for Rapunzel. That's why she has hair powers. Gonna let you sit with that one. So we then see that Klarion is like still kind of trying to hit on her and is like telling a story of just like, oh, hey, the first time I cooked a spell, it failed. And she's like, oh, yeah, well, what happened there? And he explains this whole story about like Tickle the cat. And she's like, oh, yeah, your cat's dead. That's still weird. So she asks him, hey, did you ever kill anyone? Because I swear I felt something. He's like, no. She's like, are you sure? And then he kicks a thing that causes something else to explode. And then they just drop it, and then he realizes, wait a minute, someone else is watching us. There's somebody with Rasp. We should go check on him. So then they go over to Rasp, and he's got a spider robot crawling on his chest, and he's like talking dirty with it. He's like, oh, I feel a tingling sensation. She's like, oh, well, do you like that? And he's like, oh, very much, Contessa. He's named the spider Contessa. So Klarion comes in and says, get off of him. Spider latches onto his face. He then starts like doing spells, throwing it into walls and like trying to pull it apart. And Raspa's like, don't hurt her. And he's like, what do you mean hurt? It's a spider, bro. And he's like, no, she's so much more. First you take Zell from me, now you take Contessa. So Klarion pops it open. And inside is the mark of Cole, one of the guys who's bad in this. And he's just like, oh, I didn't know Rasp was such a gullible sucker. So Zell demands that Klarion drop it. It starts fixing itself. But more than fixing itself, it transforms from a tiny little spider bot into a full-sized person bot. Not just a person, a sexy woman. So Contessa is apparently now in this place as a robot lady friend of Rasp who is programmed and exists only to please him. And Clarion's like, dude, you got to get rid of the sex bot, man. It's not cool. And she's like, don't worry, she's not a sex bot. I love her. And it's like, okay, that's messed up. So they go into the details of like how she's able to get different building materials and grow much bigger by using parts of Rasp as well. And just like, that's messed up, but all right, whatever. So yeah, it's basically a sex bot. So at that point, they realize, okay, well, Rasp is going to be doing things for a while. Let's go research this symbol on Google and see what it pulls up. And Clarion's like, yeah, I guess we should prove it's evil before we kill her. So we then cut over to the Necropolitan Club where Cole and, well, the name of the other guy is Necrot are. And apparently Cole's thing is he makes the evil technology, and what he's doing right now is he is giving away what he calls buddy bots for free. He's like, it's the first law of advertising, and Necrotus is like, advertising is the darkest art of them all. And to an extent I agree, but I hate this book. So at that point they say, yeah, we gave away these robots for free, and that's going to allow us to like make more money off them later. But regardless, they cut over to the spy bot that Rasp has, and he is still flirting with it. And Cole's like, yes, we just now need someone to hook onto in that house of witches. And then we will be able to find all we need from that house. And they see that Klarion is for some reason still in the view of Contessa, saying, I'm on to you, Contessa, and just like there, right there, that's the thing. Meanwhile, Necrot is prying himself away from a chair that I guess he's been stuck in for a while. His skin rips, and Cole is able to use nanobots to fix his hand. And he's like, oh, it's great. It's scary, but it feels nice. And then Cole goes off on a long, unrelated thing about how swarms of things are still swarms even if they lose a few members, and that's why they're, like, superior in a lot of ways. Meanwhile, we cut over to the Moody Museum, and we see, God, I always forget her name. Luckily, they've got a character guide in the back of this issue. Piper. Piper is apparently got a whole thing going on with bees, and she's literally just saying the same swarm thing. She's like, oh, this swarm takes on the personality of its leader, who in this case is the queen, and the queen bee is super chill, so the swarm is also super chill. And Klarion and Rasp are like, I don't like bees. But then Zell's like, I do, I think they're cool. And yet for some reason Trevor McCarthy still draws her with a worried face. So then we go to, I don't even know, some random ass place where there's a dude who has a whole bunch of, like, techno symbols tattooed onto him. He's stuck in a memory loop, apparently, asking about where his dog is. And we meet Agent Lush Moody, who apparently is somehow related to the rest of the Moody Museum. She's investigating this guy, finds out that Cole's symbol is on him, like, oh, you should stay away from that guy, he's bad news. And then she pulls down her sunglasses to reveal she has two sets of, like, pupils in both eyes. And she's like, oh, what are you up to now, daddy? Talking about, I don't know who. Genuinely no idea. They're talking about the Klarion and how he was caught on camera, but he doesn't have a digital footprint. And then somehow she says, what are you up to now, daddy? So she goes to an armory that I guess is, you know, part of her little government op or whatever it is, saying, hey, I think I found the thing that we split off from to do this whole agency in the first place. Let's do it. And so they get guns for that. We then see the devil from the first issue has a barber shop. He's shaving this guy, and then Klarion calls up saying, hey, remember that close shave you offered me? I think I'm going to need to call that in. I'm checking out this corner of Spring and Droll. It's a robot art show, and I need you to be ready for me. So we see that him and Zell have gone to this place, the robot art show, and it turns out that this is a BuddyBot giveaway, basically. And they come up and they notice this little robot dog, and Zell's immediately fallen for it, but it's got this weird black rot on the bottom of one of its paws that Klarion notices. And then Cole, who's dressed up as a salesman, but is definitely still Cole, is like, hey, check it out. This autistic kid never talked to anybody, but our BuddyBots cast a little weird spell, and now he talks to the BuddyBot constantly. And this guy is like an abusive husband and, like, doesn't care about his wife at all. But the BuddyBot will do whatever wifely things that he asks for and won't ever complain. So BuddyBots are super cool. You want the dog? And immediately Zell's like, yes. And he's like, well, hold on. What's this black rot thing on the bottom of the shoe? And Zell's like, okay, they may still have some flaws, but no big deal. And Klarion just announces to the crowd, like, oh, all of this stuff you are getting for free, but think about the cost on the back end. You have to care for these things. It's a lot of extra money later on. And Cole's like, bro, what the hell? And Klarion just literally goes like, I just busted your money party. And he goes into his blue demon form. They start having a magic fight. And by magic fight, I mean Klarion uses magic and Cole uses his swarm of nanobots or whatever. It's a fight. I don't know what more to say with it. It just literally happens. And then all of a sudden the cops pull up. Cole just disappears. He just retreats back. And apparently, according to Klarion, he looks scared. I could not even begin to tell you what the art on this page is trying to say. But then all of a sudden, the devil pulls up and is like, hey, Klarion, you want to ride? And he's like, yes, please. But then Zell's like, you got to take me, but don't leave me with these weird cowboys. And then we just cut to Piper and Noah, the two people who run the Moody house, are in bed, clearly just having finished sex, and it's like, oh, the kid snuck off. did we give them a protection spell? And it's like, yeah, but Klarion didn't eat his food, so he didn't actually have it. And he's like, oh man, does that mean we got to get out of bed? And she's like, maybe eventually. And then they start making out again. I am halfway through this series. I think this is a 6-issue series. I'm hoping this is a 6-issue series. I am halfway through the series. I don't know what the goddamn hell is going on. Look, Trevor McCarthy's art, it does look good. It is very stylized. But here's the thing. Trevor McCarthy really likes an unconventional panel layout. He really likes messing with the flow of things. And that's fine if you have a writer who is equipped to deal with that. And Nocenti is not that writer. Not at this point, anyway. So, half of these pages, I don't understand a goddamn thing of what's going on. Add on top of that, that devil character we pulled back from the first issue. It was 2 months ago. I don't remember who the hell this guy is. I don't know anything about, what is this close shave thing we were talking about? There is no continuity here. There's nothing where it's like, oh, you should keep this in mind because it's going to be important. Everything's treated with the same low level of disdain for the reader that I just cannot get behind. So yeah, that's a book. I'm going to say it's a 4. Oh, I almost forgot to mention, that whole swarm thing that they were going on about to begin with is that Klarion at the end comes to the realization of, to fight the nanobot swarm, I have to replace coal. That's it. That's what all of the bee talk and the swarm talk, that all just led to that. 3.5 actually. Screw that 4. I'm so done with this book. Help. Batman Eternal number 36, written by Snyder, Tynion, Fawkes, Higgins, and Seeley, art by Fernando Blanco. So this issue picks up in the Robin's Nest, aka Tim Drake's hideout, and we have Harper Row and Cullen also there. And of course, he was affected by nanobots 30 issues ago. Still unsolved. Still don't know what's going on with that. But Harper's sitting by his bedside being like, hey, I miss you. I know things are tough. I'm doing a whole bat thing. I didn't expect to be this involved with stuff. Also, I saw Tim Drake coming out of the shower. He's got tons of scars, but maybe that's if I get too deep into this, what I'm going to have to deal with. I don't know. Also, didn't see his dick. Bit disappointed. And then all of a sudden he calls over the console. Tim's like, hey, Harper, need you over here. So we then see that Tim, he doesn't have any update on the nanobots, but he does know about Batman's being trapped in the Batmobile and is about to crash to his death. And he's like, look, the commissioner's gone crazy. I need you to coordinate with the cave, get everybody on the line, get things going. I got to go out to deal with Batman. And he's like, what about my brother? And he's like, Batman is more important right now, okay? And she's like, not to me. Come on, let me help you. Let me do something. And he's just like, look, you are doing something. You're coordinating with everybody. I really need everybody here, okay? I don't know why the commissioner's still a dick if he's not being blackmailed by Hush. So we cut over to Batman, who's still plummeting out of the air, and Julia Pennyworth's like, okay, think, what would my dad do? And she looks over at Dad in bed and just being like, oh, of course, enter command Blue Rose. And then we see the Batmobile crash into the ground and explode into a million pieces. And Bard just looks over at the detectives and cops being like, and that's how you take out a vigilante. And Bullock's like, you just caused a massive explosion in the center of town. You proud of yourself? You killed a guy. Congratulations, man. And Bard's like, wait, hold on, you don't understand. And he's like, no, I don't want to understand. And so they all just walk out. We then cut back to Vicky Vale, who is in Detroit getting information about Bard from the one former cop bartender. And he's like, yeah, look, when your Batman guy came out, you spawned a lot of copycats across the U.S. None of them really stuck around. But during those early days, there was this one guy. And it was just like a kid, and he kept on coming in. He was always in the emergency room because he didn't know what he was doing. But one day, Jason Bard and his partner at the time named Jody, redhead, looked a lot like Vicky Vale. They were going to this big drug bust, And all of a sudden, in comes this fake Batman, and he distracted Jason and Jody just long enough for Jody to get shot twice in the head and for the Bat Kid to also be killed. So Jason was the only one to survive the night. He came stumbling into the bar, just drenched in blood, and on the TV in the bar was Jim Gordon basically saying, Batman, put away the Joker. Batman's freaking awesome. We should all love Batman. And Jason he gets drunk, he's wasted, he looks up the screen, he's like, that guy's worse than Batman himself, because that guy is basically giving him a ticket to do all this stuff. He's trying to get Batman to do his job for him. If I had the resources, I could clean that city up right. And as he's about to be cut off from his beer, in walks Tommy Elliott, puts a hand on his shoulder, and says, hey, let me buy you a drink. So he never once after that night talked about Jody or anything like that, but he got a transfer to Gotham and everything else is history. So Jason calls Vicky and he's like, hey, I have a story you might want to hear about. And Vicky's like, yeah, so do I. And Jason's like, okay, but me first. I just killed Batman. And she's like, dude, you suck so much. Look, all right, like, I know that I was being used from the beginning. This was all part of your thing. It's all about vengeance. This is all about Jody. And Jason's like, oh, what do you know about Jody? And he's like, enough. Frank says hi. Like, this is all just this thing. Like, you just said that you took out Batman, so I'm going to hang up before he punches you in the face, which you very much deserve. But, like, you're just pathetic. That's all you are. You're just pathetic. Don't call me again. She hangs up. Jason turns around. Batman punches him in the face. And he's like, oh, it's a smart girlfriend you got there. And he's like, I don't think it's going to work out. And he's like, yeah, like I said, she's smart. So Batman reveals, the code that was entered Blue Rose dropped out the undercarriage. It allowed him to escape. But he had 6 other ways to get out. And Bart's like, no, you didn't. I had you. It's like, whatever, man. Whatever you got to tell yourself. And Batman's just like, dude, why are you... I thought it was blackmail. I thought Hush was the whole thing. But, like, you let your own men be killed. And Jason's like, from your weapons. And Batman's like, weapons that you were brought out. This is still on you, man. And Bart just comes out and he's like, no. Look, I lost the love of my life, my partner, because of some idiot wanting to be like you. And you go out there, you don't see the effect you have on the larger world. You're just in your little bubble there. Tonight, not a single person died because of the actions that I did to try to stop you. And Batman just slams him against the wall and just being like, 3 people were stabbed, 8 people were shot, and a woman was beaten to death in an alley because all of your officers were trying to deal with my thing. Like, that is on you. That is 100% your thing. So right now, you're police commissioner. I don't have the ability to put you away, but like, your partner died years ago and you created the collateral damage tonight. You can bear that weight. And Bard pulls out a gun, tells Batman he's under arrest. And then all around Bard, we get the Bat family. We get Batgirl, Red Hood, Tim Drake. And they're just like, no, he's not. So Batman then chimes in like, look, you run the system. I can't put you into where Jim Gordon's cell where you belong, but I dare you to go do the right thing. And if you don't start doing that, we'll have another chat. And so the Bat family poofs out of there. They make their way to the Batcave. Julia's just happy that Batman's alive. Jason's like, I get some love too. I was there. Alfred gets up and he's like, I didn't know we were having a family gathering. Should I make some sandwiches? And Julia's like, I knew my dad would have a code there. So it's really thanks to him in the end. And Batman just walks over to the cage that Hush is in and is just like, computer, open the cage. And Hush is like, man, I'd buy you a car, but it doesn't seem like you have any money right now. And Bruce just picks him up and starts throwing him around the cell. Julie ends up stopping him, saying like, hey, stop, don't do it. And then Hush turns to Alfred and says, hey, Alfie, how's your head feeling? To which then Julia pulls out a gun, pulls the trigger. It turns out it's just a tranquilizer dart. So Hush is going down and he's like, Julia's like, look, don't throw him around the cell. All he needs is a tiny little crack in the glass, and I'm sure he'll make all of our lives miserable. So let's just keep him trapped in here. So Batman exits out of the cell. He goes to his computer, and he's like, look, we are behind on this. Like, Hush was just another invitee. He wasn't behind all this to start with. We have no idea what happened with that train crash. Like, who caused that? And Tim's like, well, that's not true. He's like, no? What's going on with the nanobots? Who blew up Arkham? What had the technology to let Jim Gordon see what he wanted to see. Like, who did all of this? We are so behind. I need you guys to get out there and find me more leads. We're in the third act of this story, goddammit. Let's get to it. So the family goes out to do that. And Batman turns to Julia like, hey, you had concert tickets tonight. Go do that. Go enjoy your time. Because, like, this is when stuff is really going to start getting serious. So take one last night for yourself here. And Julia turns back and just like, yeah, well, you don't stretch yourself too thin either. You need to watch yourself. So Bruce is looking at all the different villains of his rogues gallery, saying it could be any one of them. And Hush is like, oh, man, you really did give me the best seat in the house to watch you go insane. And our final page is a cut to the same grid of all the villains held together by string. And we see Riddler standing over them saying, oh, he never could stand being outthought. And this is all beneath him. He should have figured it out by now. I guess I just need to give him a little push. So Riddler's involved, as of course he would be. I like it. I think it's a solid, nice part of the issue to finally have someone stand up to Bard and just say, like, you're a dick. Screw you, man. I like that. That's honestly what I've been waiting for like 20 issues now. Everything else on top of it, no, it's solid art, solid pacing. I like that. As much as the previous like issue or two kind of felt like the pivot, it felt like this was the new direction of things. This is the one that I feel like effectively actually sets it. It tells us here are the plot points that are not yet resolved, and we know exactly where we're going to start looking for them, as well as this new Riddler thing coming in. So, all in all, good direction for it. I look forward to the last, what do we got now? 16 issues? Yeah, not very long now. So, I'm going to give this one I'll give it an 8. I really did enjoy this one, and I look forward to the next piece. Future's End number 32, written by Azzarello, Lemire, Jurgens, and Giffen, art by Scott Eaton. So this issue picks up in New York City, seemingly around Christmas time, and we see that Plastique and Terry are just walking around, just enjoying each other. And Terry says, hey, we can't get Batman involved. And Plastique's like, why not? Batman, if anyone can do a job, it's Batman. You should know you're also Batman. And he's like, look, I was told from future Batman to stay away from himself because he would stop me from fixing the future. And he's like, and you believe him? It's like, yeah, he's Batman. So they walk into a pizza shop, and turns out that Terry has never had pizza before, or at least not New York pizza. And the pizza shop guy is like, all right, well, I will be your guide on this journey today. What would you like to drink? And Terry's like, a Coke. He's like, oh, well, they still have Coke in the future. Okay. So we then cut over to Terrific Tech Labs, and Bruce Wayne is talking to Mr. Terrific. And basically he's like, look, I just don't think it's a good idea. And Terrific basically says, well, that doesn't make it a bad one. He's like, no, it makes it a terrific one. And basically disregarding everything that Bruce is saying about, like, look, everyone wants a U-sphere. It's a big thing. You shouldn't treat this lightly. And he's like, I'm not. Thanks for the talking point. So he chimes in. He says, hey, New York. And he shows up on all the screens in Times Square. And he basically just says, like, look, New York's the greatest city in the world. It's amazing. It's fantastic. And when I was leading the heroes, the refugees from Earth 2 here, I knew there was only one place that would accept us. This city, New York. Because these people, they always open their arms to immigrants. And we see out in the crowd, like, Plastique and Terry are, like, flirting with each other this whole time. Like, wiping some pizza sauce off of his cheek and whatnot. But basically, Mr. Terrific's whole pitch here is like, because New York's so star-spangled awesome, you all will be getting the U-spheres 24 hours before the rest of the world. And everyone freaks out. Everyone loves that. They start lining up immediately. And as Mr. Terrific ends the call, in chimes Brother Eye, and he's like, well, how did that go? And he's like, oh, it went fantastically. Thank you so much. Thanks for the suggestion. So then we go to California, to the Earth Registration Authority, and we come across Grifter, aka Cold Cash, and Lana, and it turns out that Grifter is trying to get his Earth 1 card for his previous identity of Cold Cash, but because he was declared dead, they just keep on calling him Mr. Lang because they assume that he's Lana's husband. And Lana's playing into it, just like, oh, you want a divorce? But what about the children? And Cole's like, stop doing that. Look, I'm from Earth 1. I'm Cole Cash. Like, I'm not actually dead. And he's like, well, we can appeal this if you want, but that means you're going to have to stay in our confinement for 6 months, and then you might eventually get a hearing. And he's like, all right, never mind. So he walks out now having an Earth 2 ID as Cole Lang, and he's like, why weren't you helping me in there? And she's like, I was helping you. Like, you may think that you were doing the good thing trying to get your identity back, but think about what that identity was. You killed a bunch of people that you were claiming were aliens that nobody else could see except for you, and you said they were in positions of high power, which means they would start uncovering all that. Maybe just start with the new identity then. So at this point, we then cut over to Cadmus Island. We see, the World Army or whatever's coming in, they're investigating it, and we see 50 Sue is sitting there looking at the mask of Deathstroke, and she's just like, how dare you? How dare you die? I was supposed to be the one that killed you. Brother Eye should have been taking better care of you so that I could have killed you. So now I will get my revenge on Brother Eye. And she pulls on Deathstroke's mask herself. We then cut to New York, to Dr. Yamakaze's apartment, I guess. He's also got a murder board in this place with all the Justice League members. He's like, the Justice League and Firestorm messed up my teleportation, so the explosion happened, and because the explosion happened, I am now without a body. I am trapped in the magnetic field, is what he says. He says, my transporter worked by employing a magnetic field, and somehow, some way, I now live within that field. So he 3D prints a bunch of gear that he then has the ability to magnetically control to build himself armor, and he's like, oh, well, now I can contain what I've become. And if the Justice League want to destroy me, all they have done is seeded their own destruction. And we see him explode out his own apartment building, saying that the key to that can be found in my lab. So then we cut over to New Firestorm, which is, of course, Madison and Jason. They're having trouble separating. Jason says, try it again. And Madison says, still not working. Can we come up with literally anything else? And he's like, look, something must be different now. We're not firestorming the same way that me and Ronnie were. We're going to have to go back to the lab so I can investigate exactly what may have changed. So Madison flies off. And then we get Stormwatch. If you remember, Stormwatch had escaped Brainiac. They teleported back. They are right outside of Earth's orbit as they're fighting off the last of the Brainiac drones. They say, oh, cool, we're back home. Let Hawkman know. So Adam calls over to Hawkman and Engineer, who are making out in the bay, and is just like, oh, sorry, don't let me interrupt. Then all of a sudden, they are caught by a tractor beam. Something's latched onto them, and it brings them down to the ant farm, which is the home of Shade. And Frankenstein's like, oh, yeah, it's microscopic, it's hidden, like, all this stuff. And this time, they've gone to full size. Like, they haven't shrunk down Stormwatch's ship. They've grown to full size, and they are absolutely massive. And we see Father Time come out being like, hey, cool, we wanted to welcome you guys home. And Frankenstein's like, what are you doing? And he's just like, we just want to make sure you got back to Shade safely. And Hawkman's like, I don't work for Shade. I work for Stormwatch. This feels like you just hijacked Stormwatch. And he's like, whoa, hold on now, buddy. That's not true. We just wanted to get that very valuable piece of equipment you brought with us. And Hawkman's like, oh yeah, what equipment is that? And points over to Engineer being like, her. We really, really need her right now. And Hawkman's like, what? No, like, I'm not letting you take Angie. And then Father Time snaps his fingers and brings out 2 giant-sized kaiju from inside of the ant farm and says, Hawkman, Shade's been collecting all the horrible secret things from around the world that threaten the Earth, but none of those threats compare to Brainiac. So yes, we are going to take Engineer, or we're going to sick our monsters on you. And that's where we leave off. It's all right. It's perfectly next part of the story. It does feel a bit like we are getting, I don't want to say seeds of where we're going next, but like the 50 Sue storyline had kind of petered out. Finally, we get this thing of, okay, she's seeking revenge. Not against Deathstroke, but against the fact that she didn't get to kill Deathstroke. We're finally really doubling down on the Terry and Plastique romance, so that's interesting to get there. The U-spheres are finally coming out, so What the hell is that going to be? Definitely something with Brother Eye. Yeah, I mean, I'm not impartial to what's going on right now. I do think the Firestorm plot needs to move forward a little bit more, because the Firestorm plot is currently just, why can't we separate? I don't want to be Firestorm. Like, okay, I get that. You had 2 issues of that now. Move on. Yamazaki is an interesting part. Yeah, it's just a bunch of new stuff going on. We'll see what stuff develops into something important and what stuff kind of is just padding to get us to the end here. But we've only got about 16 issues left, so we will see what happens when we hit the end. This one, however, gets a solid... I say solid, and then I waffle on. I'm going to say 7. I'm going to give it a 7 on this one. Earth 2 World's End number 10, written by Bennett, Johnson, and Wilson, art by literally everybody who can hold a pencil. Last issue we left off with Red Tornado finding actual honest-to-God Superman, and this issue, he just more or less confirms it. He's like, yeah, no, I'm definitely Superman. And Lois is like, how did you recognize me in the robot body? And he's like, Lois, I'm always going to know your voice, no matter what. And so they share a nice little moment before Superman turns to Batman and is like, look, there's barely any time left. Dassad's building an army. He was no longer satisfied with normal humans, so he sought out Kryptonians and Amazons, clones, and all this stuff. Like, I don't know how he's doing what he's doing, but he's making new warriors and champions. And then from behind him says, oh, not them, Furies. And then we find out what happened to Helena. She got turned into a demon. She's now got giant bat wings, 4 arms, and she's like, oh, the 4 Furies of Apocalypse. And Batman's like, oh God, Helena. And she's like, nope, not anymore. So she uses a whip to knock back Batman. Kara basically says, look, get Val-Zod, get Batman out of here. Superman, Lois, get out of here. I'll take care of my sister. I'll get her back. So they fly off as Lois assures Val, like, she'll be fine. She knows what she's doing. So we cut over to Chicago, where Dick Grayson just lost Barbara. She just got shot, and he is wailing. He is not okay. The kid's also crying. Everything's sad. And he picks up Barbara and starts making his way to the train. And is just like, all right, Tommy, I'm taking you and your mom onto this train. And the guy stops him and just like, where do you think you're going? Holds a gun in his head like, we're not letting brats on him. We're especially not letting dead people. And he just turns with tears in his eyes, just being like, my wife is gone. My world is dying. I'm taking my damn kid onto this damn train. And we see the dude with the gun, like, slowly turns the gun, aims it at his own head. And he's like, this isn't me. I don't know what's happening. Oh, God. And he pulls the trigger. And in walks Constantine, and he's like, yeah, that was me. And Constantine introduces himself to the group of gangsters, and he's just like, look, I don't like people who threaten kids. And the gangsters go to threaten him, and his whole gang of Obsidian and Mind Warp and all them just start going to town, start going after all these guys who are blockading the train. We then cut over to the Court of Apocalypse, where they basically say, hey, Paternus got attacked last issue. Mr. Miracle's going down into the Mobius chamber. It's a whole thing. And then we see this wizened old dude with a beard says, good. It's all part of the plan. So then we go back to the assault ship with the World Army. And Mr. Terrific's like, this isn't right. This has been way too easy. We should have been attacked like 12 times right now. And Commander Khan's like, maybe we've lost so often we forgot what success feels like. And they all think for a second, like, no, that's not it. This is too easy. So they're ready to clear out. Mr. Miracle's got to make his own way home. And it's like, no, Mr. Miracle knows something we don't. Let's go find him. So they take Mr. Terrific's boom spheres and they make their way out. We see Constantine manages to have his magical shield broken for some reason. He doesn't understand what's going on. There's also a tidal wave that's about to attack them because of a meteor part that hit the Atlantic Ocean. Lake Erie. So that's a whole thing. But we see Obsidian manages to use his power to knock out like a ton of people all at once, gets them onto the train. Meanwhile, Dick, who didn't make it on the train, is like, please take my son. He's running alongside, and Constantine's like, all right, yes, I'll take your son. And he picks him up, takes him on, and Dick's is like, oh, I swear I'll find you, buddy. I swear I'll find you. And Constantine's like, hey, you take the boy. I got to go find when my magic's broken. So he teleports out, and Dick is just left sad laying next to Barbara saying, like, I swear to God, I will find you, my son. So then we go to the other father-son bit. Down in the Mobius chamber is Mr. Miracle, who's come across Darkseid, who's stuck in this bubble of energy, and he looks like he's meditating. And Mr. Miracle's like, bro, I was told that you were not my father. Is that true? And Darkseid doesn't respond. He's like, what, you got nothing to say to me? Did you steal me? Is this a game? What the hell's going on? Where did I come from? Why did you imprison me? You ruined my life. What the hell's going on? He just gets more and more angry. Darkseid's not responding. And he's like, you think this chamber can protect you? It can't. I screw you, man. All right, defend yourself. If you don't, then I renounce you, and I will sentence you to death for crimes against the universe. All right, I will find a way to end you. And Darkseid just gives a smallest little imperceptible grin. So we then go down to the Avatars who are fighting against the Furies. It ain't going well, because Solomon Grundy tries to use Decay on Death, and Death is like, that's funny. You think that'll work. We then see that because the world is dying, the Avatars are actually getting a bit weaker. Sam, aka the White Avatar, starts to like fade away slightly, and he calls out for Alain, and Alan's like, oh no, stay with me, stay. And as the Furies manage to get them down one by one, in comes the Avatar of the Blue, the giant sea monster thing that takes out Death and Fury in one fell swoop with a very loud kraboom. So we see Mr. Miracle, Sandman fighting their way through hordes of parademons. And it's like, man, even with our boom spheres, this is dangerous. Like, where the hell's Mr. Miracle? And they get a transmission saying, wait, hold on. He's giving us coordinates. An hour later, they make their way to the chamber along with Fury and Barda. And as they go down to where Mr. Miracle is, he's like, hey, humans are here. We got to teleport out of here. And it's like, no, take the boom spheres. I'm going to make Darkseid pay. And so Fury's telling him to leave. Bard is telling him to pay. Eventually, Mr. Miracle is like, look, I need to use the boom spheres. And Terrific's just like, nah, man, those are like nukes. You shouldn't be doing that. But he's like, whatever, I need to kill Darkseid. So he throws all of the boom spheres into the energy thing that's containing Darkseid. And he's like, I would have given anything for you, but now I give you death. And as they explode, out comes Darkseid saying, you stupid idiot, my son, you've given me freedom. So Darkseid was imprisoned, and somehow Darkseid has returned. Look, there's a bunch of pages in this I would probably cut. I think that the cutting over to the Avatars bit is pretty much useless in this scenario. I think that you should have focused it a bit more heavily on that. That being said, Darkseid coming back, the whole Mr. Miracle like yelling at Darkseid and just no response, that was very well written. I actually really enjoyed that section. So in the end, it kind of balances out. I do think that there is room for improvement, but obviously it's an event weekly book that's tying in with like 3 other books. There's only so much you could do. Overall, I think this one is probably going to get I'll give it a 7.5. I think it's earned that much. It's I'm still a bit upset about the Barbara Gordon stuff from last week, but letting that go for this issue, I think they did a good enough job of, okay, they've given Dick Grayson enough pain where he can finally do something in this book. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm seeing what's coming, but all in all, 7.5. And that is it. That is all the comics put out from DC Comics this December 10th, 2014. And I will go ahead and get to next week's comics in just a second, but there is a tiny little thing I want to hint on that I won't spend too much time on, and that is the end of this month. So for anybody who's able to look at a calendar, you would know that this show, that comes out on Tuesdays right now, is coming out on New Year's Eve and Christmas Eve. Notoriously, those are not exactly great days to assume that things are open, including comic shops. So when DC had to put out its books, it did a stupid. And the stupid was, it took 2 weeks worth of books, 26 books, and it put 23 of them on December 24th. It said, yeah, look, we know you might not be open the next week. People will have spending money, though, from Christmas when you do reopen, so we want you to have all the books available. So if I were to do this show technically as books were supposed to be released, I'd be doing 23 books on Christmas Eve. I will not be doing that. So I have a plan for that. I will tell you more about it next week. I'm just letting you know I'm breaking my rules because DC did it first. Anyway, let's talk about the books coming out next week. Next week, it is a heavy week. Of course it is. They give me one holiday week and then they say, all right, back to work. We got 16 comics coming out in alphabetical order. They are Batman, Batman/Superman, Batman and Robin, Batman Eternal, Batwoman, Catwoman, Earth 2 World's End, Green Lantern New Guardians, Justice League, Future's End, Red Hood and the Outlaws, Supergirl, Teen Titans, The Trinity of Sin, and Wonder Woman. But that's not all of them because I always like to skip one just to leave you in suspense. We also have a brand new Multiversity book, Multiversity Thunderworld. I believe that is set on Earth 5, and it is following Shazam back when he was Captain Marvel. So I guess what would that Earth be? That's Fawcett Comics? Is that right? I think that's correct. Anyway, that's just going to be packed. Enjoy the extra long episode there. I'm sure it will be. In terms of events, I think it's just Green Lantern New Guardians. I don't think anything else is really doing anything right now. Yeah. It's going to be a doozy. I really hope my cold is fixed by then because even just like 2 minutes of me just saying things is enough for my throat to be like, you have to cough. Stop what you're doing. You need to cough now. And I won't, for your sake. Hopefully. I will admit, throughout at least 3 different comics in this episode, I did fully have to cough, and I just did so. But I think I edited them all out. Apologies if I didn't. It will be very obvious. So, yeah, that's the episode. If you have anything you'd like to add, go ahead and hit us up on any one of our social media places. We got links in the description to our Discord, our subreddit, our Patreon. Working on a Blue Sky. Still trying to figure that one out. Seems nice, though. Beyond that, I don't really have anything else to add, so I will see you next week. Be sure to give this thing a thumbs up, add it to your favorites, like, subscribe. I hate myself for saying these things unironically, but it really does help. So I will see you all next week. Be sure to tune in. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it.